It begins after the house goes dark, when the silence is so heavy you can feel it pressing down. It's a quiet, almost shameful ritual. I'll post something innocuous, a photo of the ocean at dusk, a line from a book I'm reading, anything that feels like a small, safe piece of myself to share. I tell myself it's for everyone, a simple connection to the world, but my thumb always betrays me, compulsively refreshing the screen, my eyes scanning for just one name, one single view. It's a foolish, tiny sliver of a connection I can't seem to give up. This hollow little habit has become my secret companion in the late hours, a constant, aching reminder of a conversation that ended long ago but that I refuse to let go of completely. It's a sad sort of hope, I suppose. This need to be seen by him. It's not about vanity. Perhaps you understand this. It's about existence. After so many years of being a we, the sudden silence from someone who was your entire world makes you question if you're even real anymore. Am I just a ghost in a life we built together? These posts are my way of making a sound in the void, a small tap on the glass to see if anyone is on the other side. Each refresh is a question I'm too afraid to ask out loud. Do you still see me? Do I still occupy even a tiny corner of your mind? The fear of being completely forgotten, of becoming irrelevant to the one person who knew you best, is a cold, heavy weight that settles in my chest every single night. But last week, something shifted. The air in the room felt different. I had been listening to music, and an old song came on. Our song. On a reckless impulse, my fingers moving before my mind could object, I posted a picture of the evening sky with just a few words about how some melodies never leave you. It felt dangerously specific, a message in a bottle tossed into a vast digital ocean. I spent the rest of the night with my heart pounding, half regretting it, half praying. The next day, he shared a post. It wasn't a picture, just text. A single lyric from a different artist, a different song, a lyric about second chances. It felt like a whisper across a crowded room, aimed directly at my heart. And now, I'm caught here, suspended in this terrifying, exhilarating space between hope and delusion. This silent, digital conversation is a thread I'm afraid to pull, for fear it will all unravel into nothing. Am I finally understanding a language he's speaking, one made of hints and echoes? Or am I just talking to myself, weaving a narrative from scraps of coincidence because the alternative is too painful to bear? The screen glows in my hands, a portal to a possibility that could either heal me or break me all over again. I'm terrified to find out which it is, but I'm even more terrified of turning away and never knowing. Maybe this feeling, this tightrope walk between faith and foolishness, makes sense to you. I remember the first time he really saw me. It wasn't at a party or some grand event. It was in a crowded bookstore on a Tuesday afternoon. I was reaching for a book on a high shelf, and he just appeared, his hand gently taking it down for me. It was his smile, I think, not a polite gesture, but something genuinely warm, as if he'd found something he'd been looking for. We didn't even talk for very long, just a few words about the author, but the way he listened, it was as if the rest of the world had faded away. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt like a complete person, interesting and whole, just by the quiet focus in his eyes. That feeling became my home. Is it any wonder I'm still searching for that gaze? Our beginning wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was a slow, quiet build, like a house being constructed one solid brick at a time. I remember the smell of sawdust from the shelves he built in our first tiny apartment, and the way the morning light would hit the coffee mugs we bought at a flea market. We didn't need grand adventures. Our world was built in the small spaces, the shared silence while reading the Sunday paper, the comfortable rhythm of cooking dinner together, his arm instinctively finding my waist as we passed in the narrow hallway. It was a language of presence, a deep, unspoken knowledge that we were a unit, that feeling of absolute certainty, of knowing someone was your anchor in the world. It's a difficult thing to live without once you've known it. It makes the quiet of this house feel so much louder. There are these tiny moments that get stuck in your memory, aren't there? I remember one evening, I was feeling overwhelmed by work, just sitting on the sofa staring into space. I hadn't said a word about it, but he walked in, took one look at my face, and disappeared into the kitchen. He came back a few minutes later with a warm cup of tea, exactly how I like it, and a small piece of dark chocolate on the saucer. He just set it down beside me, squeezed my shoulder, and left me with my thoughts. He didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't try to fix it. He just knew what I needed. That silent act of care meant more than any declaration of love. It was the foundation of our trust, this profound, intuitive connection. How do you replace that? Music was our secret language, the one we turned to when our own words felt inadequate. He used to make me these playlists, not with fancy titles, but just numbered collections of songs that somehow told the story of our week. There was a song for when I got a promotion, a different one for when my mother was sick, and a whole album that became the soundtrack to our first road trip. We could drive for hours without speaking, just letting the melodies fill the space between us, each of us knowing what the other was feeling. That one song I posted, it was from the playlist he made for me on our 5th anniversary. It was a song about weathering storms together. Posting it felt like speaking in our old language, hoping he still remembered how to translate it. I think the hardest part is remembering how effortless it all was. The connection wasn't something we had to work at. It was just there, like breathing. We finished each other's sentences. We knew each other's coffee orders. We could read each other's moods from across a room. It was a beautiful, seamless dance that lasted for years. And then, slowly, the music began to fade. The silences between us were no longer comfortable. They became heavy, filled with things unsaid. The dance became clumsy, our steps out of sync. I can't pinpoint the exact moment it happened, but I remember the feeling, the slow, creeping cold of being with someone who was suddenly a stranger. That old, easy warmth was gone, replaced by a quiet ache. And now, I'm just looking for a sign that a little of that warmth still exists somewhere. Looking back, the signs were probably there long before the silence began. They were small, almost imperceptible shifts, like the subtle change in air pressure before a storm. I remember a dinner party with friends. He was telling a story, animated and charming, and I watched him from across the table, feeling that familiar swell of pride. But then he made a casual comment about how admirable it was that our friends were still trying new things, traveling to exotic places, as if our own comfortable life was somehow static. I smiled and nodded, but a tiny, cold stone dropped in my stomach. I told myself I was overthinking it, that it was just a simple observation. But for the first time, I felt a flicker of doubt about the beautiful, quiet world we had built together. Then came the little changes in his routine. He started going to the gym in the early mornings, before I was even awake. He bought new clothes, a style that felt younger, sharper. On the surface, these were all good things, signs of self-care. I even complimented him on it. But in the quiet moments, a different thought would creep in. A small, insidious question I was ashamed to even acknowledge. Who was this for? It didn't feel like it was for us. There was a new energy about him, a focus that seemed directed outward, beyond the walls of our home. I would watch him check his reflection one last time before leaving, and the man I saw looking back didn't seem to be looking for my approval anymore. I felt a distance opening up, a space I didn't know how to cross. It wasn't that he was unkind. He was never unkind. But the easy intimacy, that unspoken language we shared, started to have static in it. He began talking more about his work, about a new project, and a younger team he was managing. He'd mention their ideas, their ambition, with a kind of excitement I hadn't heard in his voice for a long time. He never compared me to them, not directly. But in my own mind, the comparisons began to bloom like poison ivy. I saw their youth, their unwritten futures, and I suddenly felt settled, predictable. The life that had once been my greatest comfort started to feel like a cage I had built for myself, and I began to wonder if he saw it that way too. I think the real turning point was the night of our anniversary. I had made his favorite dinner, lit the candles, and put on one of those old playlists. He was late. When he finally walked in, he looked exhausted, his mind clearly somewhere else. He apologized, of course, said a meeting had run long, but he barely touched his food, and the music just seemed to fade into the background. We sat in a silence that was no longer comfortable. It was a void. I didn't ask if something was wrong. I was too afraid of the answer. That was the moment I realized I had started to walk on eggshells in my own home, tiptoeing around a truth that was too big and too painful to name. That feeling, that deep-seated uncertainty in my own gut, is what haunts me now as I stare at his cryptic post. Am I seeing a message of hope? A lyric about second chances meant just for me? Or am I the same woman from that anniversary dinner, so terrified of the silence that I'm willing to invent a conversation to fill it. The fear isn't just about him anymore. It's about me. It's the terrifying possibility that my own loneliness is making me see patterns that aren't there, that my desire for a connection is so strong it's making me delusional. Maybe you understand that feeling, when your own hope becomes the most untrustworthy thing you have. It's a profound and lonely place to be. And so I'm left here, in this digital echo chamber, questioning everything. The foundation of our love was built on a deep, intuitive knowing. I always knew what he was thinking, what he needed, but I lost that. Or maybe he just stopped letting me in. Now, I can't tell the difference between my intuition and my wishful thinking. This single line of text he posted could be a key to a door I thought was locked forever, or it could be nothing at all, a random thought shared with the world. And the scariest part is that I no longer trust myself to know the difference. That, I think, was the real beginning of the end. My rational mind, the one that pays the bills and remembers to water the plants, tells me to turn off the phone. It insists that the world is vast and full of coincidences, that a man can post a lyric to a song without it being a coded message meant for his ex-wife. This voice of reason is calm, collected, and utterly merciless in its logic. It points out the absurdity of pinning my emotional state on a single, ambiguous social media post. It reminds me of my age, of my strength, and tells me that this behavior is beneath me. But then there's this other voice, a softer, more persistent whisper. It's the part of me that still remembers the way he used to look at me, the part that believes in the invisible threads that connect two people, even after they've been severed. That voice is asking, what if it's not a coincidence? And that's the truly terrifying part, isn't it? The battle between what you know and what you hope. If I listen to reason, I have to accept a cold, hard truth. He has moved on, and I am here, alone in the dark, inventing a conversation with a ghost. The potential for shame in that realization is immense. I can almost feel the weight of my own foolishness, the pity in my friends' eyes if they knew the truth of these late-night rituals. A grown woman, a woman who has built a life, reduced to a teenager checking for a sign. The humiliation of it is a physical ache. It feels like admitting defeat, not just to the end of my marriage, but to my own sense of self. It would mean I've lost my grip, that my loneliness is so profound it has finally begun to warp my reality. But what if I indulge the hope? What if I allow myself to believe that his post was a deliberate signal, a tentative hand reaching out across the digital void? That possibility is almost more frightening. A second chance isn't a magic wand. It doesn't erase the years of slow disconnection or the quiet pain that settled between us. It would mean opening a door that I have painstakingly tried to lock, letting all the old ghosts back into the room. It would mean conversations that we were never brave enough to have, confronting the reasons we fell apart in the first place. Am I strong enough to walk back through that fire? Hope, I'm realizing, is not a soft, gentle thing. It's a demanding, terrifying force that asks you to risk everything all over again for a future that is completely uncertain. This is where the guilt creeps in, cold and familiar. I replay our final months together, not the arguments, but the silences. I remember the evenings we sat in the same room, living in separate worlds. The air thick with unspoken resentments and fears. There were so many moments I could have spoken up, so many chances to ask, "Are you happy? Are we okay?" But I didn't. I was afraid to hear the answer, afraid to be the one who shattered the fragile peace. I chose the comfort of a quiet house over the potential storm of the truth. Was my silence a form of consent to our ending? Did I, in my own passive way, help build the wall that now separates us? Perhaps I am looking for a sign from him because I am too much of a coward to send one myself. The fear of starting over is a heavy anchor. At this age, you've already built a world. You have your routines, your shared memories with friends, your favorite coffee mug that fits perfectly in your hand. The thought of dismantling all of that, or rather, the thought of building something new from scratch, is utterly exhausting. The energy it takes to learn a new person, to reveal your own worn-out places and vulnerabilities, to build a new language of intimacy. It feels like a mountain I no longer have the strength to climb. So I cling to this digital thread, this ghost of a connection, because the familiar pain of missing him feels safer than the vast, unknown territory of a life truly without him. It's a terrible kind of comfort, this limbo. And so, the silence continues, both on the screen and in my life. I haven't told a soul about this. Not my sister. Not my closest friend. How could I explain this fragile, almost not there thing I'm holding on to? They would tell me to be strong, to move on, to block him. They would say it with love, but they wouldn't understand. They wouldn't understand that this silent, one-sided conversation is the only thing that makes him feel less gone. This prolonged emotional quiet has become my own private world, a place where I am both the prisoner and the guard. It's a dangerous place to live, I know. A place where a single lyric can feel like a promise, and where my own hope is the most unreliable narrator of all. I am caught in a standoff with myself. My finger hovers over the screen, wanting to respond, to post another song, to give him a clearer sign that I heard him. But the fear of misreading everything holds me back, a paralyzing force. Then the opposite thought comes. What if I just delete the app, turn off the phone, and choose to live in the certainty of the ending? But that feels like a kind of death, a final surrender. And so I do nothing. I just sit here, in the glow of the screen, trapped between the terror of being wrong and the terror of being right. Maybe this is what it feels like to be truly alone. Not the absence of another person, but the absence of your own certainty. It was 3 nights after his post about second chances, and I was still trapped in the same loop. I'd open the app, stare at his words, and close it again, a prisoner of my own indecision. But tonight, something was different. The paralysis gave way to a strange, restless energy. My thumb had a mind of its own, scrolling down, past the lyric, past the week before, past a month of his life documented in sterile, public squares. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for anymore. Perhaps I thought if I dug deep enough, I would find another clue, another piece of the puzzle that would validate my hope. It was no longer a ritual. It had become an archaeological dig, sifting through the layers of his new life. A life that continued to move forward while mine had been paused, waiting for a sign. And then, I saw it. The screen froze under my thumb. It wasn't a dramatic photo, nothing that would mean anything to anyone else. It was a picture of a book, resting on a wooden table, illuminated by a sliver of morning light. The book was an obscure collection of poetry I had given him on his last birthday with us. My heart leaped for a fraction of a second, but my eyes weren't on the book. They were on the hand resting gently on the open page. It was a woman's hand. Slender fingers, nails painted a soft, pearly white, a delicate silver ring on the thumb. It was not my hand. My hands are practical. The nails are short. The skin tells the story of years of work and worry. This hand was young and hopeful. The caption simply read, "You were right about this one." Suddenly, everything clicked into place with a horrifying, brutal clarity. The lyric about second chances. It wasn't for me. It wasn't a whisper across a crowded room. It was for her. It was part of their story. A new story I had no part in. The song I had posted, our song, was just a coincidence. A ghost from a past he was actively leaving behind. He wasn't speaking in our old, secret language. He was learning a new one with someone else. I had been standing outside a window, watching a scene meant for another person, and I had convinced myself the romantic music playing inside was for me. The foolishness of it all washed over me in a cold, sickening wave. I wasn't decoding a message. I was just reading someone else's mail. A different kind of silence filled the room then. It was no longer a silence filled with longing and possibility. It was empty. The hollow ache in my chest, a companion for so many months, shifted. It was no longer about missing him. It was about having lost myself so completely in the echo of what we were. The phone in my hand felt alien, a block of ice. The shame was a physical thing, a heat that rose in my cheeks as if the whole world could see me in my dark living room, staring at a picture of a stranger's hand. I had built this entire narrative, this fragile house of hope, on a foundation of my own desperate need, and with one casual post, he had demolished it without even knowing it existed. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, my actions felt deliberate, not compulsive. With a slow, steady movement, I moved my thumb to the icon and held it down. The small X appeared. I didn't hesitate. The app disappeared from my screen. The glowing portal closed. There was no grand sense of liberation, no sudden feeling of strength, There was just a quiet, profound finality. The thread I had been so afraid to pull had not unraveled. It had simply been cut by someone else's life moving on. The digital conversation was over, and the most painful discovery of all was realizing it had never truly begun. I was, and had been, completely alone in it. And now, the silence was real. The strange thing is, the silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was just empty. It was the quiet of a room after the television has been turned off, the phantom noise still ringing in your ears. For months, I had been filling the silence with a story, a narrative I carefully constructed from digital breadcrumbs. I now see that my hope wasn't a gentle flame. It had become a distorting lens, warping coincidence into communication and random pixels into promises. The pain of this moment isn't just that he's found someone new. It's the profound embarrassment of realizing I was the only one in the conversation. Perhaps you understand that feeling. When you want something so badly that you become your own most convincing liar, building a beautiful house that was never meant to stand. This whole time, I told myself I was afraid of being forgotten by him, of becoming irrelevant to the life we once shared. But that wasn't the whole truth. The real fear was that I had already become irrelevant to myself. I had outsourced my sense of worth to his gaze, waiting for a digital reflection to tell me I still existed. Each refresh of the screen was me asking for his permission to matter. Seeing that other woman's hand wasn't just about jealousy, it was the final, undeniable proof that his story was moving forward, and I had willingly cast myself as a footnote in it. The most terrifying part of being forgotten by someone isn't the silence from their end. It's the silence that grows inside you when you stop listening to your own voice. I don't know what tomorrow will look like. There is no sudden surge of strength, no triumphant feeling of freedom. There is just the quiet, heavy truth sitting in the dark with me. The ache is still there, deep in my bones, but something has shifted. The compulsion is gone. My thumb no longer twitches with the need to check, to search, to decipher. The question is no longer, does he see me? For the first time in so long, a new, much quieter question is beginning to form in its place. What happens now that I am finally starting to see myself? The future is a blank page, and while that is terrifying, it is also, finally, my own. Maybe that's a beginning.